So there have been some things going on with Kate Middleton and the royal family, and some of the stories that they're telling just aren't really adding up. I know that you don't really know that much about what's going on with Kate Middleton, but what can your guides tell us about how she's doing right now?
So what is entering is that there are so many smoke and mirrors with what goes on there, and they're losing their grip on humanity and the illusion that they play over humanity. And they put on these public spectacles to play humanity and play on their heartstrings. So as far as Kate goes, they are really showing me like which version of Kate are you, like they're showing me that they have clones on backup for the royal family at any given time that they can access. So which version of Kate are you referring to is the question.
How are they able to do this?
To clone humanity.
Yeah, so what do they do? What does the process look like?
So there's different avenues in how they clone, but they have this is science that is very well achieved, that's been achieved for ages and ages. And they can either take an embryo and clone you that way. They can use like skin cells, or like they're showing me skin cells, like not skin cells. Um, oh, stem cells is what they're saying. They can use like your stem cells to create a clone basically off of the DNA. However, when you are cloned, it's never an exact replica. There's always going to be different markers, different, it's just that's the hard part is to, um, when the body is growing, it accelerates sometimes at different rates than you had when you were in the womb. And so the acceleration of different growth patterns can cause the clones to look different than the original body, but it is made up of all the DNA structure and the strands that are originated within the blueprint of the original body. And so if you were to take DNA from one clone to another, it would replicate the exact same. However, the physical appearance may be different based on the growth patterns of the growing. So they accelerate the cloning process. A lot of times they try to accelerate it because sometimes not specifically within the royals, because they actually have several on hand that they're able to access, but with other like if there's an exiting of the soul, like the body gives out here and they need to do an emergent clone, that's when the clones look really, really different, is because they're accelerating the growth pattern of the DNA strands to make up for the time that it's emergently needed. And so then you'll have the clones looking kind of really ridiculous. You'll have some of these celebrities that go missing and then they come back and they just look like a different person. And usually it's because um, they they didn't honor the contract, not the contract with their soul family, but the contract that they may have signed here and that they were taken out, or other things that have gone on. So it just depends on how how it's processed and like the timeline of the processing.
So how are they conscious? So do they use Kate Middleton's consciousness or just her programming?
So
'Cause
you can do a transfer of consciousness, which was a very uh the technology is there. You can transfer the consciousness very easily in a lot of ways, or can be like you have a base blueprint of a software, a lot of the thoughts, the imageries, the memory, core memories, if you will, and the core behavior and patterns. Those are like a just a generic software, if you will. You can upload that software with a different consciousness. So the different consciousness that comes in is going to have access to a lot of those memories, behavior patterns, and everything, but it's going to have its own consciousness signature frequency, but accessing those other things so that it's more believable.
So where does this consciousness come from?
Well, it could come from any consciousness exiting. It could be consciousness free floating that per se in the ether that just needs in they're conjuring in, they're calling in to access this the body and use it as a vehicle to move around, to have experiences, to play a role. It would be the same as when you're born. When there's a fetus being there's a consciousness waiting to come in and access that. And it's not really any different in that aspect, but you can transfer one consciousness from a body to another.
So is the royal family just here to distract us from the things going on in the world?
Not really, like that's not their sole purpose. Like they do want to, like they're like, it's not control and it's not to, well, yeah, it is control. Like they're showing me a stacks and stacks of gold, right? So there is control there in that aspect because whoever controls the gold controls uh like the energy and controls the narrative and controls the dialogue. But it's more or less to they want to be present, they want to be idolized, they want to be adored, and they want their customs and traditions to be kept alive. And by being public figures, they're able to do that. Um, but I mean, they're all aware of the role that they're playing, and they all aware of that the skin that they of who they really are.
So let's get into that. So who are they really? So are they one of the families that do control the world, or is there still another family behind that?
So their family would be one of the controllers. However, um, here's where it gets convoluted. So in the timeline that you're seeing, they're still playing their role. However, the power that they have had has come to an end. However, it looks like they're still in power because that's a part of the evolution of humanity, is them being in that role and playing that part. But as far as a spiritual warfare and the battle that has happened between the powers and the powers of what you would call the light, that has already been won. But when that battle victory happened, it would have caused too much trauma to humanity to, if you would, shock them into understanding all these greater things that have been going on before their very eyes, the illusion that has played part before their very eyes. And so, therefore, even though the victory has happened, they're still being forced to play a role to help slowly awaken humanity.
What is the connection between the royal family and the Catholic Church?
They play together, however, they're different teams battling for the same thing. Like they work together and they, for power, for souls, for energy, if you will, for gold, for riches. There's so many different things that they are a part of. But if they were the last two standing, they wouldn't be unified. Someone would want to be ahead. And so they work together a lot to accomplish these things. However, they're not on the same team.
How is the royal family awakening humanity at this time?
Well, at this time, there's a lot of attention on them and curiosity as to the customs and ceremonial things that they do. And so humanity also has an understanding of the crimes that have happened within their own family, that anyone that is of light or decides to encompass more of the light than the dark, they don't like that because it takes away their power. And so, what you've seen with Princess Diana and the death of Diana, and now what's going on with Kate, Kate was a breath of fresh air for a lot of humanity. And what is going on is awakening people to see what happens to these lights within this family and how this establishment, if you will, handles those things. They're noticing that Kate does not look like Kate.
Yeah, definitely. Does the royal family have some kind of reptilian DNA?
Yes.
And has it been bred through the bloodline? Or how is it that they still have this kind of DNA?
Yeah, it's the bloodline. It's the bloodline. There's a lot of inbreeding within the royal family that they're showing me. They're showing me like there's a lot of sister uncle, or not sister uncles, sister cousin kind of things, like weird, um, whether it's publicly known or not, there's a lot of inbreeding to keep the bloodline pure.
What's the importance of keeping the bloodline so pure?
It keeps their abilities, like being of pure bloodline, and then the soul signature frequency aligning with that bloodline actually gives them more power, more ability to easily access um, through the rituals and ceremonies, that energy and that power. So it's just a way, and it's like an ego thing. Like they're just very proud of being reptilian. And so it's like they don't want to mix it. They don't want to be, stink up their bloodline is what it feels like.
Is there anything else that they
Yeah.
want us to know about the royal family or what's going on with Kate Middleton?
So I think with her in specific, what questions do you have? Because like my team's saying, like she wants to know something specific. So have her ask it.
Yeah, so I guess, okay, so what I noticed because I was at my parents' house and they watch a lot of TV, so I just ended up watching it with them. So the royal family posted one Photoshop picture. The internet went crazy and said how photoshopped it is. And then there was a second picture of Kate Middleton. Well, it didn't look like her at all. And the royal family is very good at showing us what we want to see. So I guess like at what point does it go from awakening to distraction? Because I could see them releasing one photoshopped picture on accident, but for the most part, two in a row, I can't see the royal family doing that, even with technology and how consciousness is raising.
So there's two. So your question is, why would they, is it an awakening or a distraction?
Yeah.
So what they're really saying is that, well, it could be both, depending on where people are at, right? And like how people choose to have perspective of the events going on and how to view things. So The intention, it's almost like you do something and you put it out there, and you do it with not neutrality, but maybe neutrality is what they're trying to show me, is like you just put it out there. And however people take it, it's just a depiction of where they're at. They're trying to show all the ways that the royal family has smoke and mirrored over the years. And using like they're showing me like social media, TikTok, they can show you one perspective of what the BBC may be showing you as what's happening. And they play this very nice, lovely music, and you're like, aha, the royal family's arrived. What a lovely event. And then you have a side perspective of someone who is actually there protesting with their banners up and their signs in the air, and they're shouting, go away, we don't want you here. And how you can place on a timeline those two perspectives side by side. And there's no way the royal family or the media for the royal family is showing you that the people don't want them there. That is things of disclosure at this time, showing how they have manipulated the perspective, and how the perspective of humanity has been manipulated on a grander scale, not just with the monarchy. And so it is a awakening, but if you get too much into it of wanting to know the nitty-gritty and the sacrifices and the crimes against humanity that they've been charged for and all of those things, that can be distracting, because it does lower your frequency. And unless you can look at those things and understand, always come back to, there was a reason this happened, to honor the lives that participated on both sides of those journeys, because you knew it was a part of the higher perspective of the evolution of humanity. And so if you can look at things like that with that perspective, always, you can have your first response. We're not saying to not be human. We're saying it's a test of where you're at. If you can bring it back to that neutral perspective, if if it's distracting or not. So if you bring it back to that perspective, then it's not going to be a distraction. It's just knowledge, and you're just going to be geared with that knowledge of how far this goes in what they've done through humanity. Given the fact that you understand that, like we say, the light has won, the victory has already happened. However, the way it plays out on the timeline, we've ran that timeline. We ran the timeline of where we just allowed the disclosure of all the things that happened, the crimes against humanity, the children involved, the people involved, just the wars and people's lives lost over money and power that never they were played. They were played like fools in a lot of ways, in families that were destroyed based on that. I mean, if we were to have unveiled all of that at once, that timeline, there was more chaos than what could exist, and that timeline was just an implosive one. So we've played out the scenarios, and the way to utilize this information for the disclosure at this time is to use these actors in this play, now that they're under our spell, if you will, under our control, if you will, and being able to manipulate them, because they've got to go there and live these roles, knowing that they've lost all power.
So when Queen Elizabeth died, was that really the end of the royal family?
It lost her power before she passed. However, it was very important for her in that figure to end in her role. So the power was taken away before she died. However, that was played out, and that was a ceremonial closing of those gateways, if you will.
So are they aware of this? Are they trying to keep these gateways open, or do they also know that it's ending?
They know it's ending, and that they know that they have to play these parts. They're given their script, they're given their parameters in which they can operate it, and they don't like it. They don't like it because they know that, like, they're sitting there in their, the same houses, but they don't own the home anymore. It's like you owned a house, someone comes and takes the deed from you, and now you're a squatter in your own house. Like, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel like home anymore. But they have to play this part. Because the crimes against humanity was so bad that what if they didn't volunteer to play these parts, if when during their conviction, they weren't not volunteering, but I guess if you will, if they didn't agree to play these roles, then we would take them out and just put actors in their place. And there are some that are actors.
Okay, so you're talking about each individual soul coming in to have this experience.
Within the royal family, they were all placed on a, I guess you would call it a tribunal. I don't know, a military, or it's more of like a galactic federation. I'm showing they were placed on trial for all of their crimes against humanity, found guilty. And when their, I guess, sentencing was to occur, they were given the option to still exist, to have an opportunity to learn a little bit more lessons if they lived within the parameters of the role that they were going to play, or they were taken out and actors were put in their place. Different souls were put in those avatar bodies.